Well, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Genealogy with Desi L. Campbell. Tonight, we will discuss the Holmes story, dating back to the late 1700s with Washington Holmes and Susan Holmes out of Sampson County, North Carolina. We have two special guests with us on this evening, two of my DNA cousins, David Richardson and Vonda Holmes Gibbs.
All right. Hi, my name is David Richardson. I'm originally from Maple Hill, North Carolina, but I currently live in San Antonio, Texas. I've been here for 20 years. I was in the military, so that's what brought me down here to San Antonio, and I decided I liked it down here, so I just stayed. But my roots and my heart is still in Carolina, right there in Maple Hill. I'm a descendant of Dolphin Holmes through his daughter, Susan Holmes.
Okay, so I am Vonda Holmes Gibbs. I'm married. I am from New Jersey. I grew up in Newark. I am the daughter of Floyd Alton Holmes, who is the son of Floyd Henry Holmes. He is one of 10 children who was born to Floyd Henry Holmes and Maddie Newton Holmes, and they are from Maple Hill. There's 10 children there. I think they have over close to 30 grandchildren and 60, 70 great-grandchildren at this point. My grandfather, Floyd Henry Holmes, is the son of Mittie Ann Moore and Adolphus Holmes. And I'm not sure how many children they had. It was a pretty good amount. I think maybe 6 or 7.
They had quite a bit, yes.
Yeah, they had a few children. I did grow up, go and spend my summers down there, and I remember knowing some of my grandfather's sisters and brothers, but not all of them. I'm thinking it might have been close to 9 children, and right there in Maple Hill in that community. So, I got to know a lot of the people around there in terms of the aunts and uncles of my grandfather, but we never kind of got further than that.
So this is the Holmes story. By Desi L. Campbell, and we're going to start with the beginning of what I found about the Holmes. A lot of this information I did find via the using Ancestry DNA. So quite a few people have taken the Ancestry DNA test, so I was able to connect a lot of these families together. All right, so what I found first was Washington and Susan Holmes. So Washington Holmes was born around 1795. We're not exactly sure where the Holmes came from. We're assuming that he may have come through South Carolina, just based on some of the things that we found out later on. So Washington and Susan Holmes, as far as we know, they had 4 children. I believe there were more, but these are the 4 that I found so far. One was Henry Holmes, was born around 1815. One was Marshall Holmes, born around 1826. So that's who we come through. And then there was Washington Holmes, born around 1829. And then there's Isaac Holmes, born around 1832. So those are the 4 siblings that I know of. I know there had to be more, but these are the ones I found so far. Okay. All right, so I found Marshall Holmes and Elizabeth, I found Elizabeth James. I never found Marshall Holmes in the census, because I'm assuming he passed away before 1870, or he was sold and went somewhere else.
Well, now remember we had talked one time before, and remember I sent you a document that I found with a Calvin Holmes.
Yeah, now I found a Calvin Holmes.
I'm assuming that they probably are the same, because when you look at the 1870 census record, there's a mortality census record that was taken around the same time of the 1870 census. It was taken basically they recorded any deaths that happened the previous year, leading up until the month that regular census was taken, and the month before the regular census was taken, there's a Calvin Holmes that passed away that matches up precisely with the dwelling and the home and everything that Elizabeth Holmes and children were living in.
Calvin and Marshall are the same person.
My assumption is that they're the same person. The dwelling numbers and everything matched up. She's listed as a widow in that census. It's the month prior to that census. So based on that, and then I had a couple other documents that I found that had a name of Calvin Holmes as a father.
Yeah, I found that the Calvin Holmes, but it was confusing to me because I thought it was a brother, but I couldn't find hardly any information. So I left him out because I wasn't sure who he was. So that makes a whole lot of sense. So his name was probably Marshall Calvin Holmes or Calvin Marshall Holmes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I think.
And that's why somebody named the child Calvin.
The Dolphins' oldest child was named Calvin.
Calvin, okay. So that makes a whole lot of sense. He probably
and then my great grandmother's first child was named Calvin.
And Calvin. Okay. All right. So here's Elizabeth this is the 1880 census. They were in the Union Township. By 1880, Union was actually Pender County and not New Hanover. In 1870, it was New Hanover. Yes. So I'm assuming they did not move. And for the life of me, I've been trying to figure out where Union is or was. And
I came across an old map, and the best that I can tell, it's around the 421 Watha area, close to Sampson County.
What it was at that time called Union, which I have a map, and I'll put it up there when I actually do the editing. But I have a map which shows where Union was at that time. So it was just really a little township, and Union led right up to Hartley, which is Maple Hill. So if you see, she had Judge Holmes, she had Amanda, Dolphus, Rachel, Fanny, Virgil, Peter, Job, Flora, Edward, and Ellen. These are the children she had. She had all these kids before 1870. And Ellen is the last child, and she was 1 year old. So definitely Calvin Marshall Holmes had to be born, had to be living, if he's the father, which I know he's the father, had to be living during that time, a year prior to that. But she was 1. So that makes a lot of sense. All right, but I want to go back. If you look at this document right here, we found this marriage certificate, a marriage bond for Marshall and Elizabeth Holmes. And it was in Duplin County, and it was in 1845. So as you see, there's Washington and Susan Holmes. Now, the reason why I said Washington Holmes, because the other Washington Holmes, the son, I have quite a few DNA matches to that family, that person. And I actually found Washington Holmes still living in 1870, and they were living over in Sampson County.
Okay.
So that's why I think he's the father. Brian Shepherd.
Yeah, Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, he found something that says Susan was the mother of Marshall. So they were somehow married and had children. So you got Marshall Holmes, who married Elizabeth James, which is a whole nother mystery. The James, I know she came from the James plantation, and we just trying to figure out which set of James she came from. That's still something we're still working on. So we got Judge Ruffin Holmes, And I actually found his family. They live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Judge Ruffin Holmes was born in 1849, died in 1928. He married Amanda Elizabeth Eliza Johnson. They had 3 kids, Julia I. Holmes, Isabella Holmes, and Dalford Holmes, which I think is supposed to be same person as, or same name as Dolphus.
Yeah.
So I found the descendants of Isabella, and I was able to go down there and visit with them. And I got some pictures and stuff from that family. A lot of them have, the older ones, of course, have passed away since then, but there's still quite a few of those family members down there.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go back up to Judge, and then we're gonna go to Adolphus. The first Adolphus, which is where you come through, he married Betsy Susan James. The mystery is his wife has the same name as his mother.
Yes.
Of course, it's 2 different people, but that is really interesting. So Betsy Susan James and Adolphus Holmes had Calvin Holmes, Edith Holmes, Susanna Holmes, Anna F. Holmes, Iris Holmes, Dolphus Holmes, Henrietta Holmes, Victoria Holmes, Leela Holmes, John Ander Holmes, Rosella Holmes, Rosetta Holmes, Ruffin Holmes, Rouse Holmes, and Grace Holmes. So you can explain which one of these.
So I came from Susanna Holmes, Dolphin's one of his older daughters. My grandmother, Bessie Jane Wooten, is her daughter. Susanna Holmes married Island Wooten from the Wootens in Maple Hill, and they had 14 kids, 9 girls and 5 boys. And so my grandmother was one of her children, and then her daughter is my mom.
Okay, which one of her grandchildren are your grandparent?
So Susanna's daughter, Bessie Jane Wooten Pickett, is my grandmother, and then her daughter, Vernell Richardson, is my mom.
All right, then we have Amanda Holmes, which I didn't find much on Amanda. She's born around 1852. I could not find a death date on her. Then we have Fanny Holmes. Again, didn't find much on her. She did marry a Ben Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually have a DNA match through this line, which is Josephine Smith. Ben Smith and Fanny had Josephine Smith, James W. Smith, Julia A. Smith, and Alan J. Smith. I think the DNA match is through this Josephine.
Oh, okay.
And I think they lived in Burgaw. To Peter Smith. Peter Smith, very interesting young man. Peter Smith married a Helen Holmes. They had 1 child, Connie, and then he married somebody else and had a daughter named Margie Anna. Margie Anna married a Wales, which is another side of my family. And I have several DNA matches through this line as well.
Okay.
Then we go up to Rachel. Now, Rachel Holmes married a Pearsall. No, she married a Smith, I'm sorry. Rachel Holmes married a Morris Smith. And quite a few of that line still lives in Burgaw. And the lady named Miss Rachel Pearsall. I never met her. I talked to her on the phone years ago. She's passed away since then, but she came out of Hall's Chapel Church in Burgaw, and that's pretty much where that family line went to church at.
Mm.
There's quite a few of them. And then you have Virgil Holmes, which quite a few people in Maple Hill come through Virgil Holmes. And I do know a story. Of course, Virgil Holmes married Catherine Pickett. And
yes.
They have Walter Holmes, Joseph Holmes, Lacey Carroll Holmes, Betsy Ann Holmes, Julia Holmes, Stella Holmes, Ed Holmes, Arthur Holmes, Nancy Holmes, and Mary Susan Holmes. Now, the story that I heard that Virgil Holmes and Adolphus Holmes, they were brothers. But they lived in two different sides of the town. So one lived in Onslow County and one lived in Pender County. So for years, they thought they were two sets of homes in Maple Hill, and they were having two family reunions. So I came around the Holmes probably in the mid to late 90s. Late 90s, because I didn't know anything about it. My great-grandfather, who was the son of Ellen Holmes, died in 98, and he was 99 years old. And we asked him, where was his family from, because we had no idea. And he told us across the river in Burgaw, of course. We had no idea what across the river was. So eventually I figured out Maple Hill. So I got in touch with, I started looking for homes in Maple Hill, and I found Miss Nicey Holmes and Mr. Adolphus Holmes. And then we made that connection. Shortly after that, my great-grandfather died. And so, and they actually came down for the funeral. And when Mr. Adolphus walked in the house, it was so funny. My granddaddy looked up and saw him, and it scared him because Adolphus, Miss Nicey's husband, looks just like my great-granddaddy. Hidden image. They look so much alike, it scared me. Scared everybody. So so they didn't know they were two sets of homes. So now they figured out that it's all one set. And I think Mr. Shepherd kind of laid that on the line.
Well, also, I don't know if you know about this, but there was some bad blood between the families of Virgil Holmes and Dolphin Holmes, because they were brothers. But Virgil Holmes, he died. He died in a railroad accident.
Yes.
Around 1907. He was in a railroad accident, and he died.
Yes.
Some years after that, Dolphin Holmes' wife died.
Yeah, I know all about that.
And Dolphin Holmes married Virgil's
wife.
widow.
Yes.
And so there was some bad blood. The interesting thing with that is Virgil Holmes' wife is also she would be my second great aunt. She's my grandfather's aunt. So my grandfather, Sam Pickett, who married Bessie Jane Wooten, Susanna's daughter, Catherine Holmes, was his father's sister.
Okay. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of crossing over going. I know there's a lot of crossing over. Lots of crossing.
And so there was kind of from what I understand, there was kind of some bad blood between the two, because the brother married the brother's.
But that was
his brother's wife, and
that was a kind of like a tradition back then, that if the wife had kids and the husband died, if there was a single brother, then he married that wife. That was really a big thing back then. I know, and I shouldn't be telling this, I know one of my aunts or great aunts or great aunts down here where I live at, she married a man, she married 3 brothers. She married him, she had kids by him, he died, he married the next brother, and then she didn't have any kids by him, then he died, and then she married the next brother and had some kids by him. So that was just what they did. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
But that's what happens, you know, and they know we can do about it.
Yeah.
I'm just glad whatever happened.
It makes for interesting story years later.
It does. We stop it. Edward Holmes, or Flora Holmes. I'm not sure if I found anything on Flora. I didn't find anything on Flora, but she was born around 1862. I think I only found her in the 1870 and 1880 census. And then there is Edward Holmes, which I think Edward and Edmund are probably the same person.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think they're the same person. Yeah, I'm 99% sure they're the same person. But didn't find anything on him. He was born around 1866. And then you have Ellen Holmes, which I come through Ellen Holmes.
All right.
So Ellen Holmes marries James Anthony Wales. Ellen Holmes was born in 1869 and died somewhere around 1940. James Anthony Wales was born around 1864 and died in 1930 in Savannah, Georgia. Well, not Savannah. He died in Hinesville, Georgia. Somehow between 1890 and probably 1920 or 20 something, 25, somewhere in there, a lot of people left North Carolina going south to work at turpentine. So a lot of his family, the Wales, moved to that area, to Hinesville, Bullock County, and Savannah, Georgia, to work in turpentine. So I'm assuming that's why he went and left his wife with all those children. So they had Hattie Wales, Effie Wales, Promise Wales, James Andrew Wales, Obed Adger Wales, Trudy Wales, Cornelia Wales, and Gatsy Wales. I come through Obed Adger Wales. That is my great-grandfather, and I was fortunate to be able to know him and, spent, he died in 98, so I spent 25 years or so knowing my great-grandfather. But it wasn't until the end of his life that I started asking questions.
Yeah.
But what was interesting about him was we always knew his name was Adger Wales. Well, when I started looking it up, I couldn't find him on the census at all. So we started asking him about his family and who they were. And so we said, well, we don't ever find you on the census. And my grandparents, or my grandmother, she kind of knew all of his siblings. And so we said, well, who is Obed? And he said, that's me. We had no idea that his name was Obed Adger Wales.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense because James Anthony Wales had a brother named Obed. So he named him after that. So I come through Obed Adger Wales. Obed Adger Wales married Martha Stokes. And they had Dorothy Wales, which is my grandmother.
All right.
And my grandmother is still living.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, she just turned 94 last week.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I think I saw you post on that. That's awesome. Happy late birthday to her.
Yes, thank you. So she met Vernon Barney Moore in Maryland, and they had Dorothy Wales, which is my mother, and then my mother met Ernest Lee Campbell, and that's where I came from. So that is pretty much how I connect to the Holmes line.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go back. Job Holmes married a Phyllis Murray, and they had Amelia, an infant child that died at birth, Carrie Holmes, Edgar Holmes, Newell Holmes, and Ludella Holmes. Ludella, I actually have a DNA match, or several DNA matches that go through Ludella Holmes.
Mm.
So that's how I was able to through the Washington Holmes line. All right.
Yeah, that's pretty wow.
Yeah. So these two, Calvin and John, these are actually children that go over here. So I'm not sure why it comes out over here, but I guess because I do have a Calvin Holmes out there, which I need to take off my tree because I'm since now that Calvin and Marshall are the same. So this person right here, I'm not sure who this person is. I've sent emails. Wait a minute, is that you?
No, that's me.
Lord.
Yeah, that's me.
I was like, D. Rich, yeah, that's you. Okay.
Yeah, that's me.
All right, so that's you. So you come through Adolphus, Susan, Betsy Jane Wooten. Your mother must be still living.
Yeah, my mom's still alive. And the reason that's there because that's the name I put in my tree.
Oh, okay.
So,
So that's why it's there. Okay.
That's why Calvin Holmes comes up.
Okay, so we both need to change that to Marshall Calvin Holmes.
Yeah, we probably do that.
Yeah. So then this is the other young lady. This is Vonda. She's your close cousin, I'm assuming.
Yeah. She's from because I remember cousin Floyd, as my grandmother's cousin.
Yeah.
So yeah, I remember him.
So if we look at this now, this is very interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Man, this is like phenomenal. So as you see, this is where my grandmother comes through Ellen. But I'm gonna go over here. Now this young lady right here,
I have a match for her too,
which comes through the second Adolphus, and then Farley Holmes, and then Caleb James. I've talked to her a while back. I can't remember where she lived at. And then I have 11 DNA matches. Or my grandmother has 11 DNA matches through Adolphus.
Yeah, that's yeah, y'all have a lot of similar matches too. So yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So we have Anna F. Holmes, which is the one I just showed up. So this Shaquandra Bryant, which I'm not sure who she is, but I know she would be kin to Shepherd, Brian Shepherd.
Yeah, I know. We went to school together. I know who she is.
Okay. And then I have 3 matches through Iris Holmes, which one comes through Sula James, which is Christopher Pickett. Now, I know him.
Yeah.
I knew him from college.
Yeah.
He went to Central, and I went to Johnson C. Smith, and I met him. And when I found out he was from Maple Hill, I said, you got to be my cousin. And lo and behold, there he is right there. Then there's Stacy James, and then there is, I'm not sure what her real name is, but she comes from Mary Alice James.
Yeah, I'm not sure who that is.
And then we have Dolphus Holmes, who comes through, Floyd Williams, who comes through Floyd Henry Holmes. And then we have Kamisha James, comes through Lily Sharpless. I know who she is. And then we have Rosella and the Gores, Tracy Williams, and Garrick Jordan. Now, I've talked to him, Garrick Jordan.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really know a whole lot about his family. I think he lives, I'm not sure where he lives. He lives out?
He's, I want to say he's up in Connecticut.
Okay.
I think he's up north. He's like a minister and a singer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I want to say he's up in Connecticut area. The last that I saw.
Okay, and then we have under Ruffin Holmes, Antonio James and Jacob Jerome. And I talked to him as well.
Yeah.
Then we have under Rachel Holmes, Rachel Meredith Smith. So I have this Janie Rankin, which is the granddaughter of Lenora Smith, which I found a picture of her. And then we have these two right here, which I think they live in, I want to say they live in New York. I've talked to them as well. And they come through Maggie Robinson. And then we have Virgil Holmes. I have 2 DNA matches through him, but 3. My grandmother has 3. I have a couple others, and my sister has a couple of, those are probably about 5 or 6 other matches that come through Virgil. And then we have, who's next? That's my line. And then we have Job Holmes. So I have 2 matches through Job. And what's interesting is a lot of this group right here married into so these people are very double related to me because they are married into the Wales side of my family because Ellen married a Wales. And that's pretty much it with the DNA matches. So what we're trying to do is, or what I'm trying to do is trying to get all this information together and put in a book. I am probably 80% done. I've just been trying to collect some more pictures. I've actually been to Maple Hill numerous times this year. I've sat in several people's houses that I did not know, and they didn't know me, but they allowed me to scan their obituaries. So I've been able to, I probably got 300 or 400 obituaries from down there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
and that was just from 3 houses.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
About
Yeah,
400.
I saw the pictures where you had went through the cemeteries and took
Yeah,
pictures.
I went to all the cemeteries,
Stuff like
took
that.
pictures, because that's where the history is, man. History is out there, and I I'm trying to just put all of that into the book so that people like to look at pictures. They don't do a lot of reading. They just want to look at the pictures. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Let's Talk Genealogy. Join us next week on June 19th, which is Friday, June 19th at 8 p.m. as we celebrate our Juneteenth celebration. For this edition of Let's Talk Genealogy, we will feature 4 of the Hartley County African American slave narratives: Nellie Smith, Isaac Johnson, Charity McAllister, and James Turner McLean.